My name is Amaya Williams, 35, and I never expected my Friday night to end with 3 scared kids on my doorstep and a note saying, "Back on Sunday." My narcissistic mother, Patricia, had abandoned my half-siblings without warning to party in Las Vegas with her new boyfriend. I had no idea that my decision to protect Emma, Jacob, and Lily would result in my own mother blaming me for her arrest. Let me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to make an impossible choice to protect someone you love. I've always had a complicated relationship with my mother. Patricia Williams is what therapists like me would clinically describe as having narcissistic tendencies, though I spent most of my childhood just thinking she was selfish. At 52, she's still beautiful in that carefully maintained way, with dyed blonde hair and an obsession with appearing younger than her age. But beneath that carefully crafted exterior is a woman who has consistently put herself before her children. Patricia had 4 children with 3 different men. I was her firstborn when she was just 17. My father, James, stuck around until I was 5 before deciding family life wasn't for him. I have vague memories of him teaching me to ride a bike, but they've faded over time, replaced by the reality of his absence. My 3 half-siblings came later. Emma, now 12, is the daughter of a businessman who moved to Seattle and sends occasional child support checks, but has no interest in actually being a father. Jacob, 8, and Lily, 5, share the same father, a bartender named Rick, who disappeared when Patricia told him she was pregnant with Lily. None of us kids share the same father, but we share the experience of being Patricia's children, which comes with its own unique challenges. Growing up, I quickly learned that Patricia's needs always came first. If she had a date, I would be responsible for making dinner for myself. By the time I was 10, I was essentially functioning as the parent in the house whenever Patricia was pursuing her latest romance or career dream. None of those dreams ever materialized into anything stable. Instead, we moved from apartment to apartment, always one step ahead of eviction notices. I left home at 18, determined to break the cycle. I worked multiple jobs to put myself through college, eventually earning a psychology degree and then a master's in counseling. I now work as a psychological counselor at a community health center in Chicago, specializing in helping people who grew up in dysfunctional homes like mine. It's not just a career for me, it's a calling born from my own experiences. Every time I help someone process their childhood trauma, I feel like I'm healing a small part of myself too. My relationship with Patricia became increasingly strained after I moved out. She viewed my departure as abandonment, not as a normal part of growing up. When I confronted her about her parenting or expressed concern for my siblings, she would accuse me of thinking I was better than everyone else because I had a college degree. The truth was, I was worried. I saw history repeating itself with Emma being parentified just as I had been. Despite the tension, I tried to stay connected with my siblings. I would invite them for weekend visits to my small but cozy 1-bedroom apartment in a quiet Chicago suburb. My place isn't fancy, but it's mine, filled with books, comfortable furniture, and my rescue cat Luna, who supervises everything from her perch on the windowsill. These visits became increasingly difficult to arrange. Patricia would cancel at the last minute, claim the kids had other activities, or simply not answer my calls when I tried to make plans. When I pushed back, she would accuse me of trying to steal her children. I wasn't trying to replace her. I just wanted to be a stable presence in their lives, something I never had growing up. About 6 months ago, I tried to address my concerns more formally. I noticed during a rare visit that Emma seemed exhausted with dark circles under her eyes. She mentioned offhandedly that she was often up late helping Lily when she had nightmares. When I brought this up with Patricia, suggesting that Emma shouldn't have adult responsibilities, she exploded. "You think you know everything about parenting now? You with your fancy degree and no kids of your own? When you have children, then you can tell me how to raise mine." After that conversation, Patricia became even more restrictive about my access to the kids. I went from seeing them once a month to barely speaking to them on the phone. Emma would sometimes text me from her friend's phone since Patricia had taken away her phone privileges for talking behind her back. I felt powerless watching from a distance as my siblings navigated life with our unpredictable mother. I tried to respect Patricia's boundaries while still being available to my siblings. I sent birthday and Christmas gifts. I attended Emma's school play sitting in the back to avoid a confrontation with Patricia. I worried constantly, but tried to tell myself that Patricia would never actually harm the children even if her parenting was far from ideal. Looking back, I realized I was in denial about how bad things had gotten. I didn't want to believe that the woman who had raised me, however imperfectly, would put her children in danger. I was about to discover just how wrong I was. It was Friday evening when everything changed. After a particularly exhausting week, counseling clients through their traumas, I was looking forward to a quiet night alone. I had changed into my comfortable pajamas, heated up a frozen lasagna, and settled on the couch with Luna purring beside me. I had just queued up the new thriller series everyone at work had been talking about when my doorbell rang. It was nearly 8 p.m. and I wasn't expecting anyone. For a brief moment, I considered ignoring it, assuming it was a package delivery or perhaps a neighbor. But something made me pause the show and walk to the door. When I looked through the peephole, my heart skipped a beat. Standing on my welcome mat were my 3 siblings huddled together against the cold November air. Emma, the oldest at 12, stood slightly in front of the others, her arm protectively around 5-year-old Lily, who was clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. Jacob, 8, stood quietly beside them, a small, rolling suitcase at his feet. They all looked up at the door with expressions that mixed hope with uncertainty. I flung the door open immediately. "Emma, Jacob, Lily, what are you doing here? Where's Mom?" Emma, always the responsible one, reached into her pocket and handed me a folded note written on the back of a gas station receipt. The handwriting was unmistakably Patricia's hasty scrawl. "Amaya, I need time for myself. We'll pick kids up Sunday. Patricia." That was it. No explanation, no contact information, no apology for the imposition. Just 10 words that dumped all responsibility for 3 children onto me without warning. "Mom dropped us off," Emma explained, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "She said she's going to Las Vegas with Tony for the weekend, and that you would take care of us until Sunday." Tony was Patricia's newest boyfriend, a man I had met exactly once and who seemed more interested in his phone than any of the children. I had no idea they were planning a weekend getaway, much less that I had apparently agreed to babysit. "She just left you here on the doorstep?" I asked, still trying to process what was happening. Jacob nodded solemnly. "She didn't even wait to see if you were home." The realization that my mother had simply abandoned her children on my doorstep without confirming I was even there sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the November air. What if I had been away for the weekend? What if I had been working late? I stepped aside to let them in, noticing for the first time how underdressed they were for the weather. Chicago in November required winter coats, hats, and gloves, but the kids wore only light jackets. Lily's shoes were mismatched, one sneaker and one Mary Jane, as if she had dressed herself in a hurry. Once inside, I tried calling Patricia, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I texted her demanding an explanation, but the messages remained undelivered. Either her phone was off or she had blocked my number. "When did you last eat?" I asked, noticing how Lily was eyeing my barely touched lasagna on the coffee table. "Lunch at school," Emma replied. "Mom said we'd eat on the way, but she was in a hurry to drop us off." It was now almost 8:30 p.m. The kids hadn't eaten in over 8 hours. I immediately went to the kitchen and began pulling out everything I could find to make a quick meal. As I scrambled eggs and toasted bread, I tried to appear calmer than I felt, asking casual questions about school and friends. Jacob remained silent, answering only in nods or single words. Lily seemed distracted by Luna, who was cautiously investigating the new visitors. Only Emma maintained a facade of normalcy, answering my questions while helping Lily take off her mismatched shoes. After they had eaten, I set up my bedroom for the girls and made a comfortable spot on the couch for Jacob. As I was helping Lily change into a t-shirt of mine that would serve as a nightgown, I noticed bruises on her arms. "Lily, what happened here?" I asked gently, pointing to the marks. She shrugged. "Mommy was in a hurry this morning. She pulled me really hard when I couldn't find my shoe." I felt a knot form in my stomach. Once the younger two were settled, I pulled Emma aside to talk. "Has this happened before, Mom, leaving you somewhere unexpectedly?" Emma's eyes darted away, a telltale sign she was uncomfortable. "Not exactly like this, but she goes out a lot, sometimes overnight. Usually I just watch Jacob and Lily at home." "Alone without an adult?" I couldn't keep the shock from my voice. "Mrs. Grayson next door checks on us sometimes, but she's old and goes to bed early." Emma's tone was matter-of-fact, as if a 12-year-old being responsible for two younger children was perfectly normal. "Does Mom leave you with food, emergency numbers?" Emma hesitated. "She leaves money for pizza sometimes, but the delivery guys know us now." She paused before adding, "Please don't be mad at Mom. She's just been really stressed since she lost her job at the salon." I hadn't even known Patricia had lost her job. The gap between what I thought I knew about my family's situation and the reality was widening by the minute. I gave Emma a hug and promised we would figure things out in the morning. As I lay on the living room floor that night, having given my bed to the girls and the couch to Jacob, I stared at the ceiling and wondered what exactly Patricia was doing in Las Vegas while her children slept in borrowed clothes in a home she hadn't bothered to make sure was available to them. The worry I had carried for years about my siblings had transformed into something sharper and more urgent. This wasn't just neglectful parenting anymore. This was abandonment. I woke up Saturday morning with a stiff back from sleeping on the floor and the surreal realization that I was suddenly responsible for 3 children. The events of the previous night came flooding back as I heard the sound of cartoons playing softly from my living room. I found Jacob already awake, sitting cross-legged on the couch and watching an animated show with Luna curled up beside him. He had a natural gentleness that animals responded to, and my normally standoffish cat had apparently decided he was acceptable company. "Good morning," I said, trying to sound cheerful and normal. "Did you sleep okay?" Jacob nodded without taking his eyes off the screen. "Your couch is more comfortable than my bed at home," he said quietly. "Are the girls still asleep?" I asked, heading toward the kitchen to start coffee. "Emma is. Lily went back to sleep after she had a coughing fit. She couldn't find her inhaler." I paused. "Inhaler Lily has asthma." Jacob nodded again. "Since last winter. She needs medicine sometimes, especially when she gets excited or scared." This was the first I'd heard about Lily having asthma. I made a mental note to ask Emma more about it and to check if they had brought any medication with them. The list of Patricia's parenting failures was growing by the minute. By the time Emma and Lily woke up, I had made pancakes and was trying to formulate a plan for the day. I needed to get the kids some basic necessities since they had arrived with minimal clothing and no toiletries. As we sat around my small dining table eating breakfast, I gently questioned them about their home situation. The picture that emerged was worse than I had imagined. The refrigerator at home was often empty. Patricia would bring home fast food when she remembered, but the kids frequently had to fend for themselves. Emma had become adept at making meals from whatever she could find, usually cereal or sandwiches. Bills went unpaid until service was about to be cut off, and then Patricia would scramble to find the money, often borrowing from boyfriends or friends. "Last month the lights went out for 2 days," Emma informed me, her voice carefully neutral. "Mom said it was because of a storm, but Jacob saw the man from the electric company outside." "Were you scared?" I asked, imagining them in the dark. "Not really," Emma shrugged. "Mrs. Grayson let us charge our phones at her place, and we have flashlights for emergencies." The casual way she described what should have been a traumatic experience broke my heart. These kids had normalized a level of neglect that was staggering. After breakfast, I took them shopping at the nearby discount store. As I helped them select necessary items, I noticed more concerning signs. Jacob's shoes were so worn, the soles were separating, and he walked with a slight limp. Lily didn't seem to know her own clothing sizes, suggesting she rarely got new clothes. Emma kept checking price tags and trying to steer the younger ones toward the cheapest options. "It's okay," I assured her. "Get what you need. Don't worry about the cost." Emma looked at me skeptically. "Mom will pay you back right when she comes on Sunday." The question hung in the air. We both knew the answer was probably no, but I nodded anyway. "Don't worry about that now. Let's just make sure everyone has what they need." After shopping, I took them to a nearby park to burn off some energy. It was cold, but sunny, and the playground was relatively empty. Watching them play, I saw glimpses of normal, happy children emerging. Jacob, so quiet and withdrawn in the house, became animated as he climbed and slid. Lily laughed as she went down the slide again and again. Even Emma relaxed enough to join in rather than just watching over the younger ones. During a quiet moment when Lily and Jacob were engrossed in building a leaf pile, Emma sat beside me on the bench. "Is it okay if I tell you something?" she asked, her voice low. "Of course," I said. "You can tell me anything." "I'm failing math," she confessed, tears suddenly welling in her eyes. "And I might get kicked off the debate team because I've missed so many meetings. I want to do good in school, I really do, but it's hard when you're taking care of everyone else," I finished for her. She nodded, wiping her eyes quickly as Jacob looked our way. "Mom says school is important, but then she needs me to watch Lily and Jacob, or she forgets to sign permission slips, or she doesn't have money for the field trip." She took a shaky breath. "Sometimes I feel like I'm not good at anything anymore." I put my arm around her shoulders, this niece who had been forced to grow up far too quickly. "You're amazing, Emma. What you've been doing for your brother and sister is incredible, but it's not your job. You deserve to be a kid too." "But who will take care of them if I don't?" she asked, the weight of responsibility heavy in her young voice. "Their mother should," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "And if she can't or won't, then other adults need to step in. Not another child." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Are you going to call someone like social services or something?" The question caught me off guard. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "But I promise, whatever happens, I'm here for all of you. You're not alone in this anymore." Later that afternoon, as Jacob was opening up to me about being bullied at school and how no one at home had time to listen, my resolve strengthened. These children needed stability, safety, and adults who put their needs first. It was becoming increasingly clear that Patricia was providing none of those things. That evening, we made dinner together, turning pizza making into an activity. The kitchen was a disaster afterward, with flour handprints everywhere and too much cheese on every slice, but the kids were laughing. After we ate, we watched a movie together, all squeezed onto my small couch, with Luna perched on the armrest, apparently resigned to the invasion of her space. As I tucked Lily into bed that night, she looked up at me with wide eyes. "Amaya, can we stay with you forever?" The question broke my heart and cemented my decision about what needed to happen next. These children deserved better than what they were getting, and if Patricia couldn't or wouldn't provide it, someone else had to step in. "We'll figure everything out, sweetie," I promised, kissing her forehead. "Just get some sleep now." But as I closed the bedroom door, I knew sleep would elude me. Tomorrow was Sunday, the day Patricia was supposed to return. I had no idea if she would actually show up, and I was increasingly uncertain about whether I should let her take the children if she did. What I did know was that I could no longer stand by and watch from a distance as my siblings suffered. Sunday morning arrived with no word from Patricia. I checked my phone repeatedly for missed calls or texts, but there was nothing. I tried calling her again, but it still went straight to voicemail. By noon, I was becoming increasingly concerned. Did Mom say exactly when she'd be back? I asked Emma as we cleared away lunch dishes. Emma shook her head. Just Sunday. She didn't say what time. I nodded, trying to hide my worry. Well, it's still early. I'm sure she'll be in touch soon. But I didn't really believe that. Something felt off about this whole situation. Patricia could be irresponsible, but completely disappearing for over 48 hours wasn't her usual style, especially since she knew I would be involved. If nothing else, she would typically check in to make sure I wasn't poisoning her children against her, as she had accused me of in the past. While the kids played a board game I had unearthed from my closet, I began searching through social media for clues. Patricia wasn't particularly tech-savvy, but she did have Facebook and Instagram accounts that she used sporadically. Her last Facebook post was from 3 days ago, complaining about her boss at the salon, the one Emma had mentioned she'd lost her job at. There was nothing about a trip to Las Vegas. But when I checked her Instagram, I found something. Posted just 12 hours earlier was a photo of Patricia with a man I assumed was Tony, her arm wrapped around his waist, standing in front of the famous Las Vegas sign. The caption read, "Living my best life with my man, had no responsibilities, Vegas baby." The timestamp showed it had been posted around midnight. While her children were sleeping in a borrowed bed, Patricia was out partying, proudly declaring herself free of responsibilities. The anger I felt was immediate and overwhelming. As I scrolled through her recent posts, I found more evidence of her Las Vegas adventure. Shopping bags from expensive stores, cocktails at a rooftop bar, a new designer purse that must have cost hundreds of dollars. All while Emma wore shoes with holes and Lily didn't have her asthma medication. My phone rang, startling me out of my anger spiral. It was a number I didn't recognize with a local area code. Hello? May I speak with Emma Williams' parent or guardian? A woman's voice asked. This is her sister, Amaya Williams. I'm currently looking after her. May I ask who's calling? This is Mrs. Kendrick, Emma's homeroom teacher at Lincoln Middle School. The woman's voice held a note of concern. I'm calling because Emma has missed several days of school recently without excuses, and she's falling behind in her coursework. I've tried reaching her mother multiple times but haven't gotten a response. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath before responding. I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Kendrick. Emma is with me this weekend, but I'll make sure this is addressed. How many days has she missed exactly? 7 days in the past month, the teacher replied. And when she is here, she often seems tired or unprepared. She's one of my brightest students, but her grades have been slipping. I'm concerned. Thank you for letting me know. I'll make sure she's at school tomorrow, and I'll work with her on catching up. After ending the call, I sat in silence, trying to process this new information. 7 missed days in a single month was excessive. Had Patricia been keeping Emma home to babysit the younger children? Or had Emma been staying home on her own initiative when Patricia failed to get the kids ready for school? I was still contemplating this when Lily came into the room, coughing. The harsh wheezing sound immediately set off alarm bells. Lily, are you okay? Where's your inhaler? I asked, kneeling down to her level. In my backpack, she wheezed. But it's empty. I grabbed her small unicorn backpack and rummaged through it. Inside was indeed an inhaler, but when I shook it, it was clearly empty. There was also a crumpled prescription slip dated 3 weeks earlier that had never been filled. Lily, when was the last time you had medicine for your breathing? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm while my heart raced. A long time, she managed between coughs. Mommy said we would get more, but then she forgot. I helped Lily sit down and coached her through some breathing techniques I knew might help while I frantically Googled the nearest open pharmacy. There was an urgent care center about 10 minutes away that would be faster than an emergency room, assuming her condition didn't worsen. Emma Jacob, get your shoes on, I called. We need to take Lily to the doctor right away. The urgency in my voice must have communicated the seriousness of the situation, because they moved quickly, no questions asked. As we drove to the urgent care center, Lily's breathing seemed to stabilize somewhat, but the wheezing continued. In the rearview mirror, I could see Emma holding her sister's hand, whispering reassurances. At the urgent care center, the doctor confirmed what I had feared: Lily was having an asthma attack, made worse by the fact that her condition had been poorly managed. They administered a breathing treatment and prescribed a new inhaler and preventative medication. "Has she been seen by a pulmonologist?" the doctor asked as she wrote the prescriptions. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "I'm her sister, and I'm watching her temporarily. Her regular caregiver is unavailable right now." The doctor gave me a look that suggested she understood more than I was saying. These prescriptions should help in the short term, but she really should be under the regular care of a specialist, especially given her age and the severity of her symptoms. I'm noting that in her file. As I paid for the visit and prescriptions, I found another troubling piece of information: Patricia's insurance had lapsed. The kids had no health coverage. The visit and medications cost over $300 out of pocket money I knew Patricia didn't have, even if she had been there. Back at my apartment with Lily resting comfortably with her new inhaler nearby, I went through the kids' backpacks and bags more thoroughly. What I found painted an even bleaker picture. Overdue library notices from school. A note from Jacob's teacher about his needing glasses that had never been addressed. Lily's stuffed rabbit with stuffing coming out and a safety pin holding one ear on. A collection of past due bills that Emma had apparently been gathering, perhaps hoping to remind her mother to pay them. And most disturbing of all, a small notebook where Emma had been keeping track of their meals and noting when they ran out of essentials like milk or bread. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Emma found me sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by these pieces of evidence of Patricia's neglect. "Are we going back home tomorrow?" she asked, her voice small. I looked at her, this child who had been carrying adult burdens. "Do you want to go back?" She hesitated, glancing toward the bedroom where her siblings slept. "Not really," she finally admitted. "But Mom will be mad if we don't." "Emma, you know this isn't normal, right? The way you've been living? Children shouldn't have to worry about bills or whether there's food in the house. You shouldn't have to miss school to take care of your brother and sister." Tears filled her eyes. "But if I don't do it, who will? Mom tries, but she forgets things, and she gets sad or angry a lot." I reached out and took her hand. "It's not your job, sweetheart. It's the adults in your life who have failed, not you." "What's going to happen to us?" she asked. It was the question I'd been wrestling with all day. I knew what needed to be done, but I also knew the fallout would be severe. Patricia would never forgive me. Some family members would side with her. The kids' lives would be disrupted, but continuing as things were wasn't an option. "I'm going to make some calls tomorrow," I said carefully. "There are people whose job it is to make sure kids are safe and taken care of properly. They might be able to help." "You mean social workers?" Emma's eyes widened. "Mom says they take kids away from their families." "Sometimes they do if that's what's needed to keep children safe," I acknowledged. "But their goal is to help families stay together if possible with the right support. And no matter what happens, you three will stay together, and I'll be right here for all of you. I promise." Emma was quiet for a long moment. "You know what, Amaya?" she finally said. "I dream about living like this all the time. Just normal. Dinner together. Homework help. Someone who notices when we're sick or sad." Her voice cracked. "I love Mom, but I'm so tired of being scared all the time." That night, after Emma had gone to bed, I sat down and made the hardest phone call of my life. The woman who answered the child protection hotline listened patiently as I detailed everything I had learned about my siblings' living situation. I cried as I described finding Lily's empty inhaler and the bruises on her arms. I explained about Emma missing school to care for her siblings and Jacob walking on worn-out shoes. I told her about Patricia abandoning the children on my doorstep to go to Las Vegas. "You're doing the right thing," the woman assured me as I sobbed quietly so as not to wake the children. "We'll send someone first thing in the morning to assess the situation." After hanging up, I sat in the dark living room for a long time, wondering if I had just destroyed what remained of my family. But then I remembered Emma's words. "I'm so tired of being scared all the time." No child should have to live that way. If Patricia couldn't or wouldn't provide the stability and safety these children needed, then someone else had to step in, even if it meant becoming the villain in my mother's story. Monday morning arrived with still no word from Patricia. I had expected her to at least call on Sunday evening when she didn't show up, but the silence was complete. I called out of work, explaining I had a family emergency, and prepared the children for what would happen next. "Someone from Child Protective Services is coming to talk to us this morning," I explained over breakfast. "They're going to ask you some questions about home and about Mom." "Are we in trouble?" Jacob asked, his eyes wide. "Not at all," I assured him. "They just need to understand what's been happening so they can figure out how to help." "Should we tell them everything?" Emma asked, clearly understanding the implications more than her younger siblings. I looked her directly in the eyes. "Yes, just tell the truth. Don't try to make things sound better or worse than they are. These people are here to help, but they can only do that if they know what's really going on." The social worker, Ms. Daniels, arrived at 9:30. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that seemed to put the children at ease. She spoke with each child individually in my bedroom, while I waited anxiously in the living room. When it was my turn to talk, I shared everything I knew, including Patricia's history of unstable relationships and prioritizing her own wants over her children's needs. "Based on what I've seen and heard today, I have serious concerns about these children returning to their mother's care," Ms. Daniels told me after completing her interviews. "We'll need to locate Ms. Williams and conduct a home assessment, but in the meantime, would you be willing to continue caring for the children as a temporary kinship placement?" "Of course," I said without hesitation. "They can stay with me as long as needed." "Good. I'll start the paperwork for emergency temporary custody. We'll need to do a home study and background check on you as well. But given the circumstances and your relationship to the children, we can expedite the process." She had just begun explaining the next steps when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Patricia, and she did not look happy. When I opened the door, the smell of alcohol hit me immediately. Despite it being barely 10 a.m., Patricia had clearly been drinking. "Where are my kids?" she demanded, trying to push past me into the apartment. Her makeup was smudged, her hair disheveled, and she swayed slightly on her feet. "Patricia, please calm down," I said, blocking her entry. "The children are fine, but we need to talk about what happened." "There's nothing to talk about," she slurred. "You've got my kids and I want them back. Now." Ms. Daniels appeared beside me. "Ms. Williams, I'm Teresa Daniels from the Department of Children and Family Services. I think we should discuss the situation before the children are returned to your care." Patricia's eyes narrowed as she took in the social worker's presence. "You called CPS on me." She spat at me, her voice rising. "You little snitch. You've always been jealous that I had a life after you left. You've always wanted to take my kids away." "No one is taking your children away," Ms. Daniels interjected calmly. "We're concerned about their welfare after you left them without proper arrangements for their care." "I made arrangements," Patricia shouted. "I told Amaya to watch them. It's not my fault if she's trying to make me look bad." By this point, the commotion had drawn the attention of the children who had gathered in the hallway behind us. Lily started crying at the sight of her mother in such a state, which triggered another coughing fit. The sound of her daughter's distress seemed to momentarily break through Patricia's anger. Lily, baby, what's wrong? She tried again to push into the apartment. She has asthma. Mom, Emma said, her voice steady but accusatory. Her inhaler was empty. Amaya had to take her to the doctor yesterday. I was going to refill that. Patricia mumbled, the fire going out of her somewhat. The prescription was from 3 weeks ago, I said quietly. It was never filled. Ms. Daniels intervened at this point, suggesting that Patricia step inside so we could discuss matters privately away from the hallway where neighbors might overhear. Once inside, Patricia's demeanor oscillated between defensive anger and maudlin self-pity. You don't know how hard it is, she wailed at one point. 4 kids with no help from any of their fathers. I just needed a break. We understand parents need breaks, Ms. Daniels replied. But there are appropriate ways to arrange childcare. Leaving your children with someone without confirming they're available, without providing necessary medications or adequate clothing, without a reliable way to contact you in case of emergency, these are serious concerns. As the conversation continued, Patricia's explanations became increasingly contradictory. First, she claimed she had called me beforehand to arrange the childcare she hadn't. Then she said she had asked a neighbor to check on the kids, but the neighbor must have forgotten. The kids confirmed no such arrangement existed. Finally, she admitted she had simply assumed I would take care of them because that's what family does. The situation deteriorated further when Lily had another coughing fit more severe than the previous one. As I rushed to get her inhaler, Patricia began digging through her purse, pulling out a small pill bottle. I've got something that will help her relax, she mumbled, opening the bottle. Ms. Daniels immediately stepped forward. Ms. Williams, what medication is that? Patricia tried to hide the bottle, but Ms. Daniels had already seen the label, which clearly showed it was a prescription for anxiety medication, not in Patricia's name. Is that Karen's prescription? I asked, recognizing the name of one of my mother's friends. Are you taking someone else's medication? The question seemed to enrage Patricia. Stop trying to make me look bad, she shouted, standing up suddenly. In her haste, she knocked over her purse, spilling the contents across my coffee table. Among the scattered items were several pill bottles, a small bag of what appeared to be marijuana, and most damning of all, a small plastic baggie containing white powder. Ms. Daniels immediately placed herself between Patricia and the children, who were watching the scene unfold with wide, frightened eyes. Ms. Williams, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside with me now. That's not mine, Patricia said quickly, trying to gather the items. Someone must have put that in my purse. But it was too late. Ms. Daniels had already taken out her phone and was calling for police assistance. Patricia's face contorted with rage as she realized what was happening. You set me up, she screamed at me. You planned this whole thing to take my kids away. I ushered the children into the bedroom as Patricia continued to rant, her accusations becoming more outlandish by the minute. Through it all, Ms. Daniels maintained her professional demeanor, keeping Patricia from following me and the children. The police arrived within minutes. After assessing the situation and finding the suspicious substances in Patricia's purse, they handcuffed her. As they led her toward the door, she fixed me with a look of pure hatred. I will never forgive you for this, she hissed. Never. The last image the children had of their mother that day was of her being escorted to a police car, still shouting accusations over her shoulder. Lily was sobbing in my arms. Jacob had retreated into himself, silent and still, and Emma stood tall, dry-eyed, and somehow relieved, as if a burden had been lifted from her young shoulders. As the police car drove away, Ms. Daniels turned to me. I think it's clear the children should remain in your care for now. I'll expedite the temporary custody order today. I nodded, still processing what had just happened. In the span of 3 days, I had gone from being a single woman living quietly with her cat to having 3 traumatized children in my care and my mother in police custody blaming me for her arrest. What happens now? I asked, feeling overwhelmed by the responsibility I had just taken on. Now, Ms. Daniels said gently, you start helping these children heal, and we'll be here to support all of you through the process. As I closed the door and turned to face my siblings, I knew our lives had changed irrevocably. There was no going back to the way things were before. All I could do was move forward one day at a time and try to provide these children with the stability and love they had been missing for so long. In the days following Patricia's arrest, chaos became our new normal. The temporary custody order came through quickly, making me the official kinship caregiver for Emma, Jacob, and Lily. But the legal designation was the simplest part of our new reality. Patricia was being held on multiple charges, child abandonment, possession of controlled substances, and as we soon discovered, there had been an outstanding warrant for her arrest related to credit card fraud. She had apparently been using a former boyfriend's credit card without authorization for months before he noticed and pressed charges. I took emergency family leave from my job, grateful that my employer was understanding of the situation. 3 children who had been essentially caring for themselves, suddenly living in a one-bedroom apartment designed for a single person, presented numerous logistical challenges. We established a rotating schedule for bathroom use. I gave the bedroom to the children with Emma on the bed and the younger 2 on air mattresses, while I converted my living room into a makeshift bedroom for myself. My first call after the dust settled was to my landlord explaining the situation and asking about the possibility of transferring to a larger unit in the building. He was sympathetic, but had no 2-bedroom units available immediately. I would need to find a new place. The physical challenges of our new living arrangement were nothing compared to the emotional fallout. Patricia's family, particularly her sister Diane, was furious with me for involving child services. "You've destroyed this family," Diane hissed during a phone call. "You could have helped Patricia instead of turning her in." "I tried to help for years," I responded, trying to keep my voice down as the children were in the next room. She refused every offer of assistance. The kids were suffering Diane. Lily could have had a serious asthma attack. Emma was missing school to care for her siblings. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. "Blood is thicker than water," she replied, invoking the family mantra that had been used to excuse bad behavior for generations. "You don't turn family into the authorities no matter what." "I disagree," I said firmly. "Sometimes the most loyal thing you can do for family is hold them accountable." Diane hung up on me, and several other relatives followed suit, sending accusatory texts or leaving voicemails questioning my motives. A few family members, however, quietly reached out to offer support, acknowledging that Patricia's parenting had been concerning for some time. My cousin Rachel, who had witnessed Patricia's neglect firsthand during family gatherings, dropped off bags of outgrown clothes from her own children and offered to babysit whenever I needed. My Uncle Steve, Patricia's brother, who had distanced himself from the family years ago due to his own struggles with our dysfunctional upbringing, called to tell me I had done the right thing and offered financial help if I needed it. While navigating family drama, I was also dealing with the practical aspects of suddenly having 3 school-aged children in my care. I enrolled them in schools near my apartment, explaining the situation to administrators and teachers. I took all 3 for proper medical checkups, discovering that none of them had seen a doctor in over a year. Jacob, it turned out, did indeed need glasses, explaining his squinting and headaches. Lily was referred to a pulmonologist who created a proper asthma management plan. Emma was connected with the school counselor to help her process the major changes in her life and begin to shed the inappropriate responsibilities she had been carrying. Through all of this, the children were adjusting to their new reality with varying degrees of success. Jacob seemed to be thriving with the stability and attention. He began talking more, showing interest in books and drawing. His teacher reported that he was participating in class discussions for the first time. Lily had nightmares for the first few weeks, often waking up crying for her mother despite everything. I would hold her until she fell back asleep, reassuring her that she was safe and loved. During the day, however, she was generally happy, especially once her asthma was properly controlled, and she could play without struggling to breathe. Emma's adjustment was the most complex. At 12, she understood more about the situation than her siblings and had been functioning as the family caretaker for so long that she struggled to just be a child. I would often find her checking the refrigerator to inventory our food supplies, or trying to help Lily in the bathroom when I was perfectly available to do so. "You don't have to do everything anymore," I told her gently one evening when I found her folding everyone's laundry instead of working on her science project. "Your job now is to be a kid, go to school, do your homework, and maybe help with age-appropriate chores. But you're not the parent here. I am." She looked at me skeptically. "But what if you get tired of taking care of us? What if you leave too?" The question broke my heart. "I won't," I promised. "I'm here for the long haul, no matter how hard it gets." "That's what Mom used to say too," she replied quietly, turning back to the laundry. It would take time to earn her trust, I realized. Words weren't enough. Only consistent actions over time would convince Emma that I was different from Patricia. About 2 weeks after her arrest, Patricia was allowed to make phone calls. She called my number immediately. "You've ruined my life," were her first words when I answered. "Are you happy now?" "That wasn't my intention," I replied, stepping onto my small balcony so the children wouldn't overhear. "I was trying to protect Emma, Jacob, and Lily. Protect them from what a mother who loves them, who has sacrificed everything for them." The disconnect between Patricia's perception and reality was staggering. "You left them on my doorstep without confirming I was even home, Patricia. Lily's inhaler was empty. Emma was missing school to take care of the younger ones. They didn't have proper winter clothing. How is any of that love or sacrifice? You have no idea what it's like to raise children on your own," she shot back. "It's easy for you to judge from your perfect little life." "My life isn't perfect," I said, "but I'm doing the best I can for the kids right now, which is more than I can say for you." The conversation deteriorated from there, with Patricia alternating between blaming me for her situation and making vague threats about what would happen when she got out. She ended the call by telling me she would never forgive me for turning her children against her. After that first call, Patricia began writing letters from jail addressed to the children, but filled with manipulative language and inappropriate content. Following the advice of the children's therapist, I read these letters first and shared only the parts that were age-appropriate and wouldn't cause further distress. The legal process moved forward slowly. Patricia was appointed a public defender who advised her to plead guilty to the lesser charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. She refused, insisting she had done nothing wrong and demanding a trial. The child services case proceeded in parallel with home visits, interviews, and evaluations of both Patricia and me as potential guardians. Through it all, I tried to maintain as much normalcy as possible for the children. We established routines for meals, homework, and bedtime. We decorated the apartment together to make it feel more like their home, too. I attended school events, doctor appointments, and therapy sessions. I learned each child's favorite foods, fears, and interests. It wasn't easy. There were tantrums and tears, moments of rebellion and regression. There were nights I stayed up wondering if I had made the right decision, if the disruption to their lives was worth it. But then I would remember Emma's words about being tired of being scared, or see Jacob laughing freely for the first time, or watch Lily breathing easily while she slept. And I knew that despite the challenges, we were on the right path. 3 months after Patricia's arrest, the family court judge made a decision that would change all our lives permanently. Based on the evidence of long-term neglect, Patricia's continuing denial of any wrongdoing, and her failure to comply with court-ordered substance abuse treatment, her parental rights were terminated. the judge granted me permanent legal guardianship of Emma Jacob and Lily. As we left the courthouse that day, Emma squeezed my hand. "Does this mean we're really staying with you forever?" "Yes," I confirmed. "You're stuck with me now." She smiled a genuine, unguarded smile that I had rarely seen from her. "Good. That's what I wished for." The 6 months following the court's decision were a whirlwind of changes and adjustments. With permanent guardianship established, I could now make long-term plans for our family, starting with finding a suitable home. My one-bedroom apartment had served as emergency housing, but it wasn't sustainable for 4 people. With help from my Uncle Steve and some savings I had been putting aside for a down payment, I managed to find a modest 3-bedroom house for rent in a good school district not far from my workplace. Moving day was chaotic but joyful, with each child excited about having their own space for the first time in their lives. Jacob in particular was thrilled with his room. "I've never had my own desk before," he marveled, running his hands over the simple student desk I had purchased secondhand. "Can I put my books here and maybe some of my drawings on the wall?" "It's your room," I told him. "You can make it exactly how you want it." Lily at 5 was equally excited about her new pink and purple bedroom, though she still preferred to sleep with her door open and a nightlight on. The trauma of being abandoned hadn't completely faded, and she still had occasional nightmares where she would wake up crying for her mother. Emma's reaction to the move was more subdued. She helped organize the kitchen and living room, approaching the task with the efficiency of someone who had been managing a household for years. When we finally got to her room, she stood in the doorway looking uncertain. "What's wrong?" I asked, noticing her hesitation. "It feels weird," she admitted. "Having my own room, not having to check on Jacob and Lily in the middle of the night." I put my arm around her shoulders. "You get to be a kid now. That's your only job." She leaned into me slightly. "I don't know if I remember how." "Then we'll figure it out together," I promised. With stable housing secured, we established new routines. Mornings were organized chaos with bathroom schedules and breakfast assembly lines. I arranged my work schedule to align with school hours as much as possible and found an after-school program for the days when I had late clients. Evenings were for homework, dinner together, and family time. The transition wasn't smooth by any means. There were arguments about bedtimes and vegetables. There were meltdowns in grocery stores and homework battles. There were days when I wondered if I was cut out to be a parent to 3 traumatized children. But there were also moments of profound joy and connection that made the challenges worthwhile. Like when Jacob brought home his first A on a spelling test, his face alight with pride. Or when Lily finally mastered riding her bicycle without training wheels, squealing with delight as she pedaled down the sidewalk. Or when Emma joined the school debate team and actually attended meetings instead of having to skip them to care for her siblings. Patricia's court case concluded 4 months after the family court decision. She accepted a plea deal for a reduced sentence of 18 months with possibility of parole after 12 months for good behavior. She was required to complete substance abuse treatment and parenting classes while incarcerated. The day of her sentencing, I sat in the courtroom alone, having decided it would be too traumatic for the children to attend. When Patricia was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, I barely recognized her. She had lost weight, and the artificial brightness that had always animated her features had dimmed. She didn't look at me during the proceedings, keeping her eyes fixed on the judge or her attorney. After the sentence was announced and she was being led away, she finally turned toward me. There was no anger in her expression, just a profound weariness and something that might have been regret. She nodded once, a gesture I couldn't quite interpret, before disappearing through the door back to the holding area. I drove home that day with mixed emotions. Part of me still felt guilty for the role I had played in Patricia's incarceration, even though I knew I had acted to protect the children. Another part felt a sense of closure, knowing that the legal battles were finally over, and we could focus on healing and building our new life together. The children's reactions to their mother's sentencing varied. Jacob, at 8, seemed to process the news with limited understanding of its implications. "Is Mom in time out?" he asked when I explained as simply as I could. "Something like that," I replied. "She broke some rules, and now she has to spend some time learning to make better choices." Lily cried, asking repeatedly when her mommy was coming home. I held her close, explaining that it would be a long time, but that I would be there for her every day, until then and beyond. Emma, with her greater maturity and understanding, had the most complex reaction. "Is it bad that I'm kind of relieved?" she asked that night as I tucked her in. "No," I assured her. "Your feelings are never bad, just different parts of how you're processing everything." "I love Mom," she continued. "But life is so much easier now. I don't have to worry all the time." "That's exactly how it should be," I told her. "The adults worry about adult things, and the kids get to be kids." As the months passed, all 3 children began therapy to help them process their experiences and emotions. Jacob's sessions revealed that his quietness had been a coping mechanism for dealing with the chaos at home. As he felt safer, he became more verbal and expressive. His teacher reported that he had made friends for the first time and was no longer being bullied. Lily's therapy focused on attachment and security. Her asthma attacks decreased dramatically as her anxiety lessened. She developed a passion for art, covering our refrigerator with colorful drawings of our new family, almost always depicting us all holding hands with big smiles. Emma's journey was perhaps the most profound. She had to unlearn being the family caretaker, a role she had assumed for so long it had become her identity. Her therapist worked with her on recognizing age-appropriate responsibilities and learning to ask for help when needed. She joined a support group for children with parents suffering from addiction, finding comfort in knowing she wasn't alone in her experiences. I found myself in therapy as well, working through my own complicated feelings about Patricia and my new role as a parent. My therapist helped me recognize the patterns from our dysfunctional upbringing that I was at risk of repeating and develop healthier parenting strategies. "You're not just raising these children," she pointed out during one session. "You're reparenting yourself too. Be patient with the process." 1 year after Patricia's arrest, we received a letter. Unlike her previous communications, which had been filled with blame and manipulation, this one seemed different from the first line. "Dear Amaya, Emma, Jacob, and Lily," it began. "I'm writing to apologize." Patricia explained that she had been working with a counselor in prison and had come to recognize how her actions had harmed her children. She acknowledged her substance abuse issues and her pattern of putting her own needs first. She expressed remorse for the fear and instability she had created in their lives. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote toward the end, "but I want you to know that I am trying to change. When I am released, I hope to show you through actions, not just words, that I can be better. Until then, I am grateful that you have Amaya to give you the stability and love I failed to provide." I read the letter to the children, watching their faces carefully for signs of distress. To my surprise, they seemed more curious than upset. "Does this mean Mom is getting better?" Jacob asked. "She's trying," I answered honestly. "Recovery is a long process, but this is a positive sign." "Will we see her when she gets out of jail?" Lily wanted to know. "That's something we can discuss as a family when the time comes closer," I said, not wanting to make promises I couldn't keep. "It would depend on many things, including what's best for all of you." Emma remained quiet until later that evening when she found me folding laundry in the living room. "I've been thinking about Mom's letter," she said, sitting beside me on the couch. "What are your thoughts?" I asked, setting aside the basket of clothes. "I think I want to see her eventually, but not right away. And not alone at first." I nodded. That seems very reasonable. Do you think she can really change? Emma's question cut to the heart of what we were all wondering. I considered my answer carefully. I believe people can change if they truly want to and are willing to put in the hard work. Your mom has a lot of issues to address, and it won't happen overnight. But this letter shows she's at least beginning to recognize the problems, which is the first step. Emma was quiet for a moment. You know what I realized recently? Even though everything that happened was really hard and sad, I'm kind of glad we ended up with you. Is that terrible to say? Not at all, I assured her, pulling her into a hug. Life doesn't always give us what we want, but sometimes it gives us what we need. And we needed each other, all four of us. That night, as I checked on each sleeping child before going to bed myself, I reflected on how far we had come in just 1 year. The path had not been easy, and there would undoubtedly be challenges ahead as the children grew, and as Patricia eventually re-entered their lives in whatever capacity was healthy. But looking at their peaceful sleeping faces, I knew that the decision I had made that Sunday night to call Child Protective Services, however painful, had been the right one. I couldn't change the trauma they had experienced or erase the memory of watching their mother being arrested. But I could ensure that moving forward, they would have stability, support, and unconditional love. Perhaps I couldn't rewrite their past, but every day, through countless small acts of care and presence, I was helping them write a new story, one in which they were not defined by the failures of their parents, but by their own strength and resilience. Family isn't just about blood relations or legal definitions. It's about showing up day after day in both the magnificent moments and the mundane ones. It's about creating a space where children feel safe enough to grow into their true selves. It's about love that doesn't waver even when the journey gets difficult. As I finally climbed into my own bed, exhausted but content, I thought about how sometimes the most painful choices lead to the most beautiful outcomes. By standing up to Patricia and breaking the cycle of neglect, I had not only saved my siblings, but had also found my own healing and purpose. The road ahead would not be perfect. There would be teenage rebellion and college applications and first heartbreaks to navigate. There would be decisions about Patricia's role in their lives once she was released. There would be moments of doubt and fear and frustration. But we would face it all together as the family we had chosen to become. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice to protect someone you love? What would you do if faced with a similar situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if my story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the hardest decisions are also the most necessary ones. Thank you for listening, and remember that healing is never a straight line, but always worth the journey.